Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Israel Brief, brought to you by Lay of the Land. I'm your host, Rolene Marks, with today's top stories. And it is with a very, very heavy heart that I begin this week's brief with news of the deadly shooting in Poway, San Diego, that occurred in a Chabad synagogue or shul on Saturday as congregants were concluding the Pesach or Passover festival and the Sabbath. A shooter, a murderer, I'm not going to name his or give his names. He is a white supremacist who stated in his manifesto that he wanted to send Jews to hell, opened fire on congregants, injuring 4 and killing a 60-year-old woman, Lori Gilbert Kay, of blessed memory. And my thoughts, my prayers and our hearts are with the congregation, and in particularly her family. Lori was a Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, as described by the rabbi and many of the congregants, and they spoke about her incredible courage as she dove in front of the rabbi to protect him as the murderer opened fire. Now, as you can imagine, Jewish communities around the world are absolutely reeling at news of yet another deadly killing motivated by anti-Semitism, and the shooting took place exactly 6 months to the day of the Pittsburgh shooting. And while the murderer claimed responsibility that he had defaced a mosque, he hoped that many others would follow in his footsteps. In the meantime, President Trump has phoned the rabbi of the congregation and has offered his support and his condolences. And what is quite ironic is that this week we mark Yom HaShoah in Israel, or Holocaust Martyrs Memorial Day. And once again, we are reminded that acts like this start with words. And events like the Holocaust occur when hatred does not go unchecked. And to this end, the White House have declared this week Anti-Semitism Awareness Week to highlight the problem of rising anti-Semitism around the world, including in the United States. And I'd just like to share my own thoughts, and it might sound like a little bit of a rant, but every single day we are seeing and hearing of incidents of anti-Semitism around the world, whether it results in a deadly shooting like it has this past weekend, or it's swastikas sprayed on schools, or it's campuses around the world where it's not just campus activists but also faculty and policies of universities to divest from Israel, whether it is the horrendous stereotypical and anti-Semitic caricatures that we saw in Belgium earlier this year, or it is politicized anti-Semitism, the likes of which we are seeing with the UK Labour Party, with the South African ANC, or with the members of Congress like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, and they're cozying up to terrorists and extolling anti-Semitic tropes. Anti-Semitism is very, very real. It is here and it must be fought. And another example of this brings me to my next big headline, and that is the anti-Semitic cartoon that was featured in the New York Times International Edition. And this was literally hours before this 19-year-old murderer burst into the shul in Poway, San Diego, and took the life of Lori Gilbert Kay. Now, the cartoon, if you haven't seen it, shows President Trump with his yarmulke or kippah on his head, with sunglasses on to show that that he is blind or short-sighted, being led by a dog. This time the dog is a caricature of Netanyahu. There is an Israeli flag on the dog's collar, and for us it is something that is not out of place in 1939 Germany. It is something that would find an adequate home in Der Stürmer, the notorious newspaper that used to publish these kinds of anti-Semitic cartoons just before the Holocaust. Jews around the world and many of our supporters have criticized quite harshly the New York Times for allowing this grossly anti-Semitic cartoon to be published. And a few hours after it was published, they said that it was an error in judgment, the offensive cartoon, and that's not good enough. Communal leaders like David Harris of the AJC said that apology is not accepted. As anti-Semitism rises today, so it is imperative that the media are able to understand or draw a line between what they publish in content and images like this or show on news channels, and the rise in anti-Semitism that is culminating in violent acts around the world. A couple of hours ago, the New York Times did release a statement saying that they are extremely sorry for this and acknowledging that anti-Semitism is rising, but the damage is done. The damage is done where people who are not aware and who maybe are not educated to world events and the nuances of the Middle East, as well as Israeli and American politics, already the damage is done, and those vicious stereotypical tropes are out there. Now, I know that this sounds like somewhat of an angry brief, but it is an angry brief today. We cannot sit back while hatred flourishes and flares its ugly face around the world. It is time, when the Holocaust ended, Jews took a vow. We said, never again. Well, never again is now. And it is not just a Jewish issue. It is an issue that is important for all of us around the world of multiple faiths to fight, because what starts with the Jews doesn't end with the Jews. And we have seen this in the attacks on Christian communities around the world as well. So to conclude the top headlines today, I want to highlight yet another anti-Semite, and this time the leader of BDS, Omar Barghouti, and an Israeli NGO called Batsalmo have actually appealed to Israel's Attorney General to revoke Omar Barghouti's citizenship because of the dangers that he poses from a national security perspective in creating this movement of boycott, divestment and sanctions against the state of Israel. They say that Barghouti was denied entry to the United States just 2 weeks ago, so why should Israel allow him not only to live here but also to study in our universities? Omar Barghouti says that he is being smeared by Israeli society, but hey, if you call for the destruction or the end of the state of Israel, you reap what you sow. Just a reminder, after this extremely angry lay of the land Israel brief, that you can check out our content online at www.layoftheland.online, and there is an article today written by myself about rising anti-Semitism around the world. It is called Metastasizing Hatred, and don't forget you can join our growing community on Facebook at Lottel Site. Join our family, like our content, share it, follow us. It's all there. And don't forget that you can subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below to receive your daily edition of the Israel Brief. I'm Rolene Marks, and once again, our thoughts and our prayers are with the family of Laurie Gilbert Kay and all those affected by Saturday's deadly shooting. We do know that the injured have been released from hospital, but may the memory of Laurie Gilbert Kay be blessed. I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief, and we'll chat again tomorrow.